This video will discuss a specific person's experiences with PTSD as a result of domestic violence or sexual assault. The following content may be triggering to viewers with similar experiences.
And even now in 2022, it's interesting because, as we now are on our journey to do our support group and bring information out into the community and continue to assist victims and survivors, domestic violence has not changed much from when I was growing up, and I don't think people realize it's just not talked about, as well as the sexual victimization. It is happening in 2022 more than what people want to acknowledge or even think about. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that until it knocks on your door, it's happening everywhere else, but it's not happening here. And that's a misconception, because it is happening. The cycle continues, and we still need to talk about it. Not just for our generation, but there is a lot of older adult domestic violence with seniors that is still occurring now. Classic DV, victims that are in their 60s and 70s, that this has been their whole life. Mm-hmm. So I think the misconception is that though, yes, we're getting better, I think, in identifying domestic violence, we're not there yet. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Domestic violence is happening all year round, not just in October. Mm-hmm. And so we need to have that conversation. We need to be talking about that, in the schools. We need to be talking about that at work, because it's happening.
Education and awareness, that breeds prevention, know, and we really want to start at the beginning and start that educational journey with, and it's able to prevent things, the more education you have behind what the cycle of violence is, especially in schools. Mm-hmm. There's so many cases of teen dating violence where you'll see some children perpetuating what they see at home. Yes. They're emulating what they see at home. And so we just want to bring that into the schools and just give them the knowledge so that way they have the tools to recognize the red flags. There are red flags, there are signs. And not to avoid those signs. If you see it, you have to do something about it. Go tell someone. It's easier said than done. That's also a misconception, is that everyone thinks, well, why don't they just leave that person? There are a lot of psychological chains and bonds that an individual has with the other, and it's not as simple as it may seem. And with that education, and we bring that forward, then people will know the why. They will have that answer to the why, and not blame the victim.
There's a lot of victim blaming still.
Oh yeah, victim blaming, shaming, and it's awful to hear about that, and especially experience it. I'm sure we've both experienced it ourselves, the victim blaming.
Oh, absolutely.
To where we're even afraid to say anything to anyone else, and you isolate yourself and close yourself off because you feel like there's no support. But that's where it begins, is just knowing that you have those individuals out there, those peers that can provide you with the resources.
Statistically, in the city of Cleveland, in June of 2020 through July of 2021, there was 131 homicides, all related to domestic violence. But across this country, domestic violence is very prevalent, very prevalent. Right now, I think it's one in every 3 women will experience some form of domestic violence. And we want to make sure and be clear that domestic violence can look different for everyone. A lot of times victims cannot relate that they are in a domestic violence cycle because they're not being physically necessarily abused.
So they think they're not at times being abused.
Yes.
And it's financial, you can be isolated and from your family and friends, and that's a part of abuse.
Yes, absolutely.
There are just so many different forms of abuse outside of the verbal and the physical.
Yes. And the men as well. There's one right now, definitely. It's one in every 4 men will also experience domestic violence. And that also includes same-sex cases,
Yes.
same-sex intimate partnership. And so we're not done. There's still a lot of work to be done, which is why we are here
Yes.
today. And if we can change and save one, then we've done
We've
done something.
So right at the moment, right now, I actually have a nonprofit called the Mariposa Project, and then Sandy has Empowered by Change. So we decided to collaborate and start a support group to really just provide that a safe healing space, holistic space for individuals that are going through domestic violence or any sort of trauma, and really just provide them with support and resources.
Yes, you know, Helena was already in the process with her nonprofit, and it's been amazing. So it's been a great fit, and we hope to make this a safe place for everyone these ladies that we will assist to come in and feel comfortable enough to make those changes, whatever that is. We're very well connected in our community. I mean, I am a domestic violence advocate, as she is, as we mentioned. We know the court system pretty well. It is not the most easiest system for victims, where a lot of victims many times will just fall through the cracks. And so we know the process of getting a civil protection order or getting a protection order.
The system is definitely difficult to navigate without someone who's experienced in that,
to try and help you with that
way. Yes.
It can be very intimidating for victims.
Yes, very.
And so what happens when someone is intimidated by the system, well then you don't move forward. Right. And if you don't move forward with the case, where there's, unfortunately, there's no victim, there's no crime. Right. And so you either go back to the same situation until the next time, because many times there will be a next time.
Right.
Or you decide to break that cycle and you kind of move away. Unfortunately for us, in our experience, we have not seen more of that. It's more of returning back to the offender, returning back to the perpetrator. One of the I think the major things that people don't understand, just being a support system and what that looks like. Many times, if you know someone that's going through a domestic violence situation, I think our first reaction as just individuals and the human part of us that just wants to grab someone and remove them is not always the best option for that victim. And so what do? You have to be a supporter, and that means that you have to allow that individual to make that decision, whether they stay, whether they go, but that you leave an open door.
Yes.
Because at some point, that person will come back. And so if you shut that door, then where will that victim go? Right. And so you have to be supportive, you have to be understanding, you have to lend that ear. And that's not easy for a lot of people, because you want to submit your own judgment about what you think that person should do, and that's not typically how that would work. You want to leave that open door. And so providing assistance, providing information. There is a domestic violence center here in the city of Cleveland. There's 216-391-HELP. It's a hotline that someone can call and talk to someone anonymously.
Yeah, 24 hours.
The Domestic Violence Network. There's also numbers for that. You can provide some resources and some information if they're not ready to talk to you or to disclose everything. There are resources that you can give them.
And there are trained advocates that are, able to answer those questions and help safety plan and do lethality assessments to see how, how dangerous the situation the individual is in. So that's also important. If you want to be there for someone and advocate for someone who's going through a domestic violence situation, you want to ensure that you seek some outside support as well, because the situation is very dangerous. So it can also be dangerous for the individual trying to help their friend. But just being there and lending an ear, like Sandy said, is so important. Because once you shut that door on that person, you may never see them again, and that's a real thing. And those are definitely things that happen every day. So being a supportive individual and a friend and a listening ear is number one on the spectrum there.
I think that a misconception for people is they don't realize the role that advocates play in someone's life. And when you're working with someone hand in hand, you almost become like their lifeline.
The best future I can envision is really just a world where people are aware of what domestic violence is, what it looks like in its different forms, because there are various different forms, what to look for, and just provide that education. And hopefully an ending to domestic violence. That is something that I'm sure we all look forward to and look to see for the future. But as we know that we want to be realistic, and we just really need to start with the base foundation, is that education, and that provides prevention.
I also envision, I wish I could say a world without violence, but certainly the cycle being broken, and more families seeking help, and knowing that there is help, and hoping that they can just see us and see themselves within us, because we look like you. And I hope that individuals know to get help and know that it's okay. And knowing that there's support out there for you, because you are not alone as much as you may feel like you're alone. And in addition to that, for me is the self-care and finding yourself, not being afraid to try new things, because it's an ongoing journey. It's one of those things that when you fall down, you just get back up again. You dust a little bit and you continue on, because I will say one thing in this journey for me, and I know we didn't touch too much on it, but there's been a hike in suicide. And so how important it is to talk about things, to reach out, to ask, are you okay? How can I help you? And not be fooled or mistaken by sometimes even the smiles that someone might portray, because there's a lot going on. And everyone is going through something.
Yes.
And so keeping that in mind, and just being kind.
Being kind, yeah. And if you see something, say something. I ayuda.